In your Jackman article, you highlight that the fear of robots replacing workers is used to suppress wages and unionization efforts. How does automation serve as a smokescreen for deeper structural inequalities?
Yeah.
Among labors?
Um. Well, so I mean, the narrative it goes like this, right? It's like every time there's some kind of threat to the fast food business model, the fast food labor model, um, the kind of the big wigs and then the industry and their defenders and like groups like the National Restaurant Association, it's kind of sometimes referred to as the other NRA, but it's like the main trade group that defends fast food and suppresses federal minimum wage increases. Um, they talk up this threat of automation. Like if the wages go up, if we have to start paying healthcare, we're going to just lay off a bunch of people. We're going to stop hiring people, and we're going to replace them with robots. So, that threat has been coming up literally since the '60s. And the thing is, though, it there is kind of the reality of automation, and that there are robots in the workplace and in the fast food kitchen. There are self-ordering kiosks and that kind of thing. But then there's the threat of automation, and they're different things. And so you're absolutely right to call it a smokescreen. It is that. Um, the thing is that like the industry will take any advantage it can to sell more, to move more product, to tally up more receipts. It will add every robot that it can. It will add every kind of it'll cut down every second in ordering time that it can to make its lines move faster, to get more customers in through the door, through the drive-through lanes. And so they're not waiting for anyone's permission to roll that out. They're just going to roll it out as fast as the technology allows. So, and when we have these kind of discussions around like, wow, should we raise the minimum wage or that kind of thing, and the industry comes back and says, oh, if you do that, then we'll have robots. It does a couple of things. One is that it kind of devalues fast food labor. It says like, well, these people they're so easily replaced. They could be replaced by robots anytime. And the other thing though is it kind of positions the industry as this kind of benevolent entity within our society. They're just hiring people. They're retaining as many low wage workers as they can out of the goodness of their hearts. And it's only if we kind of upset the balance, us, the voting public, who decides that, like, actually, I think they deserve a higher wage. That means the deal is off. Then fast food is going to stop showing its benevolent side. It's going to kind of shift into more kind of like cost saving maneuvers that are going to actually screw a bunch of people. And the thing is that second kind of that second illusion is even more insidious, I think, than the first. This kind of idea that the fast food industry is benevolent and they're only hiring people and only retaining the workers that they do because they're so nice, and that the robots kind of hang out in the kind of the R&D lab at McDonald's headquarters, and they're just ready to go when and they don't want them to come out into the workforce. They don't want them to replace workers, but they will if they have to, if they're pushed, if you try to raise the minimum wage. That's kind of, I think, where these kind of the smoke screen of automation really factors in.
It's also funny because I don't feel like people are really wanting to use it. I do mention in the intro that really didn't happen. I really did see a couple coming out of one of the driverless cars. I was staying in Union Square, and they were like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, oh, "Calm the fuck down. Just be lucky you didn't hit a fucking
Yep.
homeless pedestrian this time."
Yeah.
Um, and the Sutter Street McDonald's has the kiosks, and then when I drive up north, I have the same stop, and about halfway up, right outside of Bakersfield on I-5, there's a truck stop with a McDonald's. Their coffee is affordable and can keep me awake for the remaining of the drive. And even though there's maybe three or four of those screens, it's a pretty big size McDonald's, it's a truck stop, right? People don't like using them.
Yeah.
People always run to the front, and you can't just say it's an age thing, because I sit there and watch uh, every age group go up to the front counter
Yeah.
and would much rather talk to a person. Um, are we really ready? Do we really want to have that personless environment? Because so much of our life is already personless. If you work from home, if you get all your food from DoorDash, a lot of aspects of if you Uber everywhere and never ride on BART,
Mm.
a lot of aspects of your life can be so isolating. There's kind of nothing like being in a crowded restaurant with a bunch of strangers. For me,
Oh yeah.
it also breaks up the monotony of my very lonely one-man drive over 1,000 miles. So there seems to be something to be said about people still wanting to interact with people. We can't automate that away just yet. But that also kind of works against this idea that the labor at these places is extremely disposable.
Right.
And you mentioned in one of your pieces that you worked in fast food at a point in your life.
I did. I worked at McDonald's for a little bit, for 6 weeks.
In Oakland?
Well, in the Bay Area, I'll say that.
Oh, you don't want
Yeah.
you don't want Big Mick coming down.
Yeah, well, I don't. I mean,
Because depending on McDonald's, you might have worked at a bad McDonald's. It's like, oh no.
yeah. Yeah, I would say it was not in Oakland. I mean, there's other risks that you run when you were working in a fast food restaurant in Oakland. But it was in the Bay Area, and yeah. I took some measures to keep my coworkers who I discussed in that article anonymous. So that's kind of the main reason I try to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's yeah. So I worked in fast food some. Yeah, we had those kiosks, and which are going up everywhere, by the way. Interesting thing about the McDonald's kiosks, which is, I mean, the industry kiosks, they cost up to $60,000 per. They are really expensive. And so there's like this kind of, why do they keep adding them? And McDonald's has been adding them since, before Fight for 15 movement, since before, or at least before that kind of that turned into like real policy changes, and before the minimum wage increase went up, certainly it's in California. And they're certainly not just adding them in California; they're adding them in states where the minimum wage is $7.25, like in Texas. But there is a lot to be said about kind of like what does the industry get out of it? And their own studies show that when people interact with kiosks, they tend to buy more because the kiosks are better at upselling them. They can shoot you like animations of like a burger or something kind of bad. If you have like a frequent, like, sort of a frequent flyer number with McDonald's, you have an account with them, then they can say like, oh, you usually get an ice cream cone. How about you get an ice cream cone now? And so like the ticket price will go up, and so they like that. And I think that, I think that is kind of part of the reason maybe why there is. I mean, you're right that like people kind of don't like these kiosks. They will go to them if the line's really long. And sometimes the person behind the counter is, as I did plenty of time. I was working the register. I was also like frying fries, and I had to get fries out of the freezer to fry. And I'm just like, you know what? I can't take your order, but if you go to that thing, you can place your order anyway. We'll get it for you. Yeah. So people end up at the kiosk, and I think McDonald's and the industry would like more people to go to the kiosk. But it is kind of, because it isn't a human interaction, because you're kind of interacting directly with like McDonald's corporate, so to speak. It's a lot more effective at manipulating you and telling you like, no, how about you get this thing? It's in the way that a person can just, maybe looking at your face as like, you don't need another ice cream cone. Who am I kidding? I mean, it's like, I'll get you what you want, and that's good, right?
I actually